the vice chairman of the DeKalb County School Board. In our chairman's absence tonight, I will be conducting this public budget hearing for fiscal year 2014. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to recognize the board members in attendance. To my left is Thad Mayfield, Dr. Karen Carter. To my immediate right is Mr. David Campbell, Dr. Michael Irwin, Mr. Marshall Orson, and Mr. John Coleman. And to my immediate left is our superintendent, Mr. Michael Thurman. Do we have representing the Teacher Forum Council Steering Committee, is Ms. Inez Caldwell or David High in attendance? Okay. The Teacher Forum Council Steering Alternative Reps, Donna Nelson or Curleen Pippins. DeKalb Auxiliary Employees Forum, Mr. Terrell Short. DeKalb County PTA Council Rep, Ms. Marcia Coward. At this time, I'd like to call a motion to adopt the public budget input hearing and called meeting agenda as posted. Thank you. Motion by Dr. Carter, seconded by Mr. Campbell. A show of hands. Unanimous, thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Thurman to introduce the presentation and the presentor. Superintendent Thurman.
Introduce Dr. Michael Bell, who is the interim chief financial officer for the Division of Finance for the DeKalb School District. Dr. Bell comes to us as a person of high esteem and great accomplishment. He earned his master's and doctorate degree from the University of Georgia. He's a graduate of Southwestern Louisiana University with high distinction. His doctoral dissertation dealt with the administration of a major hub airport and public authority structure. He has written numerous articles that have been published in major publications across the state. From 2010 to 2012, he was a professor of practice at Georgia State University, director of finance for the DeKalb government from 1996 to 2010, served as chief of staff at the Fulton County government, chief financial officer for the city of Atlanta. He has been affiliated with Kemper Securities, CNS National Bank, and of course, Hartsfield International Airport. We thank him for his service to the country. From 72 to 75, he served as a line officer, division officer with the United States Navy. He has many qualifications, additional experience, and I'm delighted and honored to introduce him. And Mr. Vice Chair, it is my intent at the next available opportunity to recommend this board that the acting Chief Financial Officer be established as the permanent Chief Financial Officer for our school district. Dr. Bell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Superintendent. Good evening, board members. Good evening to the public attendees. I'm here to discuss and present the concept of where we think we're going to be relative to revenue and expenses for 2013, and then I want to move on and talk about 2014 and highlight some of the new superintendent's recommendations and initiatives. If I go to page 2, please. Okay, on this particular page, which is right after the title page, you'll see that the original projection for total revenue for 13 was $748 million. The sum of the revised anticipated revenue, and that's what we do at this level, we anticipate revenue, are right below that. Relative, you'll see Title 2A, $97,000 of reimbursement of indirect costs.
Mr. Bell, just for our viewing audience at home, there's a couple of documents that we have and they have at home. This happens to be the executive summary, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so for everybody who's looking on their own and on their laptops or iPads, This is the executive summary, page 2. Thank you, Mr. Bell. Sorry to interrupt.
That's fine. Thank you very much. So starting with an anticipation of $748 million, if you go down the revisions to that particular page, okay, the after-school extended daycare program, Title I substitutes, you see that we've moved from anticipated revenue of $748 million to approximately $897,000. At this point in time, our best estimate of expenses against that number is $742 million, all right? So what we're trying to do here, of course, is have more revenue than expenses to maintain and create a fund balance. Our best estimate at this point relative to the interplay of those numbers, okay, and setting aside the $3.7 million for our deficit reduction plan that we transmit to the state, is that we could have a surplus at the end of 2013 of $9,197,000, all right? Again, keep in mind that we got to get to 6/30/2013. The books have to be closed. Various adjustments have to be made. It's a very complicated process. Page 3, please. The information I'd like to draw your attention to on page 3 is that what you're looking at is our anticipations. We're starting to build anticipations for the 2014 budget that y'all will have to approve. The original anticipation, and this should be a familiar figure, is about $732,400,000, okay? The major components of that, of course, are ad valorem taxes and our QBE revenue. The bottom of page 3 indicates items that, to some extent, were not included in the original revenue anticipation, components of the intangible recording tax. We're doing pretty well on ad valorem right now, okay? And at the bottom of the page, the famous motor vehicle birthday tax, which some governments think there's going to be an upside. Some governments have elected not to anticipate that. But I checked with some individuals that I used to work with at the county, and DeKalb County has experienced an additional $1.8 million in just the first 4 months of 2013 over their prior year's revenue collections in relation to motor vehicles. So we think that gives us some upside to include a figure of this nature. The bottom of page 3, you see an FTE student weighted growth amount of $4 million. That's a pretty big number, but it relates to the kind of funding we can get for English as a second language and other special needs types of students, and we plan on concentrating in that area. Page 4, please. Page 4 is a continuation of the FY14 revenue components. Again, there's some areas that weren't initially included relative to the indirect cost recoveries on certain federal grant-funded programs. You can see we've indicated Title III, limited English proficiency, Title I, Title IIA, and those amounts of money, along with including the projected surplus from 13, give us an additional $26,673,000, okay? Keep in mind that inside of that 9.197 surplus is after-school money. It's reserved. It's not specifically appropriated right now for expenditure. So all of that being considered above, if you take the $732.4 million and you add to the additional revenue anticipations of 26.673, you get this working overall 2014 revenue amount that you'll see as we go forward of $759.073 million. Now, from the bottom of page 4 onto page 5, we're going to show you how we intend to balance that number to an adjusted budget figure. The page 5, please. On page 5, we show how we're going to take the base expense amount $370,000, okay? And start including in it some of the superintendent's mandated cuts, right? The bottom of page 5, you see those 3 mandated cuts areas of legal fees, central office vacancies, and I've been informed that those will be abolitions of vacant positions, and additional central office cuts of 18, that total is $18 million, okay? Above that, you can see where to come to a beginning, a base budget figure of $750 million, we've included the discrete budget components for the superintendent's office, communications, curriculum, and of course the biggest component of $507.334 million is for the schools themselves. Page 6, please. On page 6, we show how, under Georgia law, of course, you have to have a balanced budget, which means your anticipated revenues, your reasonably anticipated revenues, have to equate to your expected expenditure or your appropriations, okay? So the top of page 6 indicates budget enhancements that the superintendent and the administration want to recommend. You can see there's an included fund balance. Fund balance is a problem that we have had for some time now. The reduction of a furlough day, additional monies for textbooks, additional repairs to textbooks, diagnostic needs assessments, wraparound services, career pathways, et cetera, okay? Those enhancements or those additions to the base budget amount total $27,248,594. Now, keeping in mind that we had gotten to a revenue amount of $759,073, we got to show how we can balance. Start with your expected expenditures. I'm on the bottom of page 6 now, the $750,370, minus those cuts we referred to at the bottom of the previous page, plus these enhancements. You can see at this point our reasonably anticipated revenues of $759,073 equal our discussions of appropriations of $759,073. So that, yes, sir. That's sort of the mechanics of how, under Georgia law, your anticipations have to equal your appropriations, and we've built into that a fund balance amount of approximately $12 million at this point in the budget deliberations. Now, there are multiple minor revenue sources. There's the condition of coming out of the Great Recession. There's the issue of digest values. There's the issues associated with other pass-through revenues, such as the alcohol tax, that we receive 48.25% of a certain component of the liquor taxes that the county generally collects. So if people drink more, we have more money for the school system. Sad to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Yes, sir.
One of the things, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to reiterate is these are anticipated revenue estimates. This is our proposed budget, subject to review, amendment, of course, through the members of the board. But the bottom line is we've tried to follow the parameters established by this board to put academic achievement first, to restore as much as we can the trust and integrity that we have shared with our teachers and in our students, and to be good managers of this fiscal house. And I think this proposal does that. It's really not magic, and it's just that we went back and looked very closely at potential revenue sources. We captured those, we brought them forward, and we'll continue to try to do the best we can. If there are adjustments that must be made or have to be made prior to adoption, we'll do that as well. The most important thing, though, is to be transparent and to speak honestly and to share the information that we have as openly, as honestly as possible, and we've done that. And I want to thank Mr. Bell for the presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurman, and thank you, Mr. Bell. Any comments from the board at all?
I'd like to personally thank superintendent and staff for pulling together this budget. When I looked at it the first time, I thought there were improvements that we discussed with you as a board that we'd like to see there. You took a great measure, great stride towards getting there. In particular, the furlough days, signaling to our administrative staff that while we're not able to do some of the things we like to do in terms of merit, we understand that there's a cost reduction with the furlough days. We reduced that by 1 day. We talked about employee development. I see where you've tried to address the employee development at the same time. And then most of all, I think the surplus dollars that we've identified, we tried to push that out where the student is, out to the classroom. So I commend you on the effort to try and shift some of the costs away from the central office and put it out in schools and make decision-making decentralized where the principals and the area superintendents can make some of those calls and have some discretionary dollars that they can reward people for doing a good job. Thank you very much for that. I do have one question. When we talk about the $5.8 million that's in the after-school program, can you help me to understand that just a little bit more in terms of accounting for it, what it's all about?
A number of years ago, the school district decided to put in place, and there are policies and accounting procedures for the after-school extended daycare program, which is exactly what it sounds like. The funds that parents pay to have their children in the after-school extended daycare program are supposed to go for the expenses of the program, and they're itemized in the documentation, such as, building utility costs, and that type of thing. And then the school district, per the regulations, can take 10% of that money to cover those things. Now, it's sort of generally set up that that money is supposed to inure to the benefit of the school district. A recent inspection of those various accounts, and there's still some debate about it, indicates that there could be as much as $5.8 million there that could be available based on the board vote on this budget, okay, to use in the budget that would help us balance the budget, okay? So that's sort of where it is.
Yeah, and what I want to add, we placed a reserve category. There is some, in some minds, not all, confusion, conflict, disagreement over how these funds should be used. What we did was we parked them, and we will wait direction from this board as to not only the purpose, but how to reallocate or redistribute those funds back to the schools that which generated the income to begin with. The key thing that I would want the board and the public to understand is that all public dollars that is under the administration and control of the district, the numbers must be shared with the public. It's up to this board to determine how those funds in particular should be allocated and at what point and when. So the good news is we've documented to the public and that the funds exist and in the amount at which they exist, and we will await further instructions as to how or if to appropriate them for what purpose.
One follow-up question. Are there any governmental accounting standards that talks about how that can be handled? Is it clearly defined that it's discretionary?
The generally accepted accounting principles apply to all of our financial transactions. The original program was written and the policy passed by prior boards that just say, accounting principles will be followed, but this is our direction. As Mr. Thurman has correctly indicated, the money that appears on page 2 of 9 is noted that these are just funds reserved for future allocation, okay? So there's a percentage of 10% to be drawn back to cover the expenses the school district incurs to provide the service, okay? You'd have to correctly calculate the 10%, but there's nothing, there's no generally accepted accounting principle that I'm aware of that would stop the board from voting to use these funds.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mr. Coleman, you had a comment?
Yeah, I have actually 3 quick questions. I think one is a follow-up on Mr. Campbell's question. Just so I understand it clearly, are we saying now that essentially this $5.8 million is in local school budgets? Because the money's sitting somewhere now, so are they using that at this time and we're saying we would appropriate it towards the central budget or the general fund? Or am I misunderstanding that?
The program provides that when these funds are collected, they're supposed to be accounted for through a receipt book and deposited in the appropriate bank accounts, okay? And the person running the program has indicated there could be this much money available, okay? So it is available within the after-school extended daycare program right now. It's not dispersed throughout a bunch of...
We just weren't accounting for it, is that right? Or we weren't accounting for it in the budgetary estimates, but it's been...
In the original budget proposal, this particular revenue source was not discretely put in. That's correct, yes, sir.
The two questions I have real quick are about these projected the revenue revisions, both for this year and next year. There are basically two major classes of revisions that I see here. One is revisions to reimbursement amounts, the reimbursements we expect. The second is revisions to our estimates for revenue sources like property taxes, et cetera. The first question I have is with regards to reimbursements, do we think this was, I guess, did we miss something here in the process leading up to this that we've now discovered? And I guess leading from that, if we did miss something, does that mean we potentially missed previous reimbursements that we didn't take advantage of? And do we feel like we've remedied the process for making sure we've accurately reflected those reimbursement amounts moving forward, or do we feel there's still work to do to make sure that we've captured all those revenue sources?
We've dramatically improved the process, and it's a continuous improvement environment. We can always be better, and absolutely. And do I think that we've solved all the problems? No, to be quite honest with you, Mr. Coleman. But we are now doing a better job. And these revenue sources, I mean, and the public and individuals have talked to me about it, basically standard operating procedure throughout school districts all over this country to recapture some of those indirect costs. I can't speak to the past in terms of how it was done or why it was not done. All I can speak to is that in extremely tight budgetary times like this, you all have directed me to redirect all available resources to classrooms, which means I'm going to scour every corner of the budget whenever, how often I can, to find dollars that can support improving academic achievement and career readiness. And that's the mission and the directive you all have given to me, and I'm going to be very purposeful in that going forward.
And do we have folks still working on making sure that we've captured either retroactively or prospectively all the reimbursements so that, you know, we're trying to capture even more of these? Because I agree we should scour kind of every corner. Is that an ongoing activity right now?
Well, I'm extremely confident that we have brought to the district and put in a position one of the foremost experts in public finance in the country. And I have every confidence that he's going to do the job in a way that will make us all proud, and that we would take advantage of these revenue streams that either we may have overlooked or we may, I can't speak to it. I just have a tremendous amount of confidence in this man that we're going to get the job done in a more efficient and effective way.
And then the second question I have is about the revenue projections related to a revised projection of revenue sources like property taxes. I guess what I'm looking for is what's the confidence interval, to put it one way, on whether we're going to be able to realize those. Because what a situation I wouldn't want to get into as a board is to take an aggressive estimate for what those are likely to be and then over budget our expenses as a result. Because, you know, right now we've got the two balancing. And so I'm wondering kind of how you think about that, and whether we've taken kind of a medium estimate, or if this is an aggressive estimate, and if so, how we might want to recalibrate our expectations on expenses to assure we don't run into a deficit situation.
Yes, sir. I would say that this is a medium estimate at this point. Keep in mind that the budget was put in place at the beginning of our FY13, which was July 1, 2012. Okay. As you go through time, you gain a tremendous amount of detail and experience relative to your original projections. What we're doing here is just managing to the budget. You're allowed to make modifications if news comes in better or comes in worse, okay? Comes in worse. So I think that's what we're doing in this case. We have some good news in some areas. We're being cautious in other areas, but we're managing to the budget. You have to do that to be sure that at the end of the year, your expenses do not override your revenues, okay? Because that will put you in a deficit situation. Now, there are issues from prior years, as you all are aware, and the state auditors are about ready to complete their 2012 audit, which will be as of 6/30/2012, so it still will be about a year behind us.
And one of the things, Mr. Coleman, I will say to you is that reestablishing the fund balance, it may be more important than restoring a furlough day. Because right now, we've been operating with maybe $100,000. We're a $1.3 billion corporation business with $100,000 in the savings account. That's unconscionable. It makes it almost impossible to manage and lead an organization of this size with 14,000 people. And unless until we restore the fund balance, which I've heard projections should range between 40, 50, $60 million, we will not be in surplus. You can't be in a surplus, and I know that's been stated over and over again, and it's just not accurate. Until the fund balance is fully restored, you cannot bill or even engage or predict a surplus for the DeKalb County School District. I do it, we do it, but in actuality, until that's done, we will continue to be in a position where we have to save more than we spend.
Did that answer your questions, Mr. Coleman? And just like we were talking Monday night about the tax anticipation notes, the issuance, once our reserves are built back up, there won't be any need for those. We'll have excess cash on hand. And so it's a step in the right direction. Plus, this is just tip of the iceberg, first draft for budget. We're going to go, devil's in the details, all right? And so over the next 60 days, there's going to be a lot of information that we're going to have to digest. So this is just the initial overview. And I appreciate you, Mr. Bell, and being here for us. Mr. Orson, did you have any comments?
I have a couple of questions. Dr. Bell, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
You know, there's always news in DeKalb County. And so we appreciate your being here. I have a couple of questions. One is a smaller question, looking at the birthday tax change, and I know that there have been varying projections. I saw Rick Koss's comments up in Gwinnett County. It's a very hard figure to predict, but is it anticipated that there may be an upside in a year like this, but that in out years, hopefully when the economy has changed, we might see a dilution of car tax revenue because we're not getting an annuitized payment? I mean, is that sort of the trade-off?
That's the conventional wisdom on how this new state law will operate at the local level. Yes, sir.
And then I want to turn back to the after-school funds. And I have a couple of questions, and I just want to explore this a little further. My understanding is this is a cumulative fund balance built up over however many years. We don't really know how many years. And if I understand correctly, that there were actually two funds assigned to this, what I call a 10% fund and a 90% fund.
Basically, yes, sir.
Right, and the 10% fund was the district share of monies for whatever offsets or program carrying costs, so forth, which, and that the 90% fund, as a practice, and I understand that there's not a policy, and that's one of the things we may have to address, but that as a practice, the 90% fund was anticipated that those 90% funds would be repatriated to the schools that earned those funds through their aftercare program.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so my concern here is at a couple different levels. One is, and let me add, and that those funds were essentially discretionary funds for enhancements in those buildings in which they were generated because, in fact, the entire aftercare program is a discretionary program. No school is required to have this.
That's correct, yes.
Right, and it isn't, for all intents and purposes, locally managed, which begs the question about why we don't actually just run the programs entirely through the local schools. But with that said, the 90% fund, which we have by practice established a separate fund for the 90%, Elise has sent a message to these schools that your 90% are held here in some sort of reserve for anticipated future expenditures on a discretionary basis based on some process that we've put in place, as imperfect as it may be. Is that correct?
I have no specific knowledge of that, but it sounds reasonable.
Right, okay, well, it would anticipate why we had a separate fund. If it was only one centralized fund, why would we have a 10% fund? So your budget here, though, appears to, I don't mean this in such a harsh term, but appropriate that 90% fund and put it into the general fund as opposed to a school-specific fund. Is that not correct?
It's documenting the existence of these funds, but the notation on page 2 says funds reserved for future allocation.
Well, I understand that, but when I get to your whole running through your balance sheet, it's baked, that 5.8 million, the entirety of 5.8 million is baked into when you get to page 6.
Yeah. That's right.
Right, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, because I can't have the discussion if I'm not in, I understand you have the comment that reserve, but you've built a model here that includes the 5.8 million.
It is in the overall model, that's correct, but the model also includes fund balances that would be subject to appropriation and during a subsequent budget period, and that money could be considered as being included in those following fund balances.
Well, you could, I don't know, I'm not tracing the specific dollars, but the 5.8 million to your projection, which when you get to the bottom line of 759,073, that 5.8 million is built into that, if you follow. I just want to make sure I'm not misstating.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so I want to, my concern here is that the compact that the central office made with the individual schools generating those funds was that, and as evidenced by practice and as evidenced by the establishment of two funds, a 10% fund and a 90% fund, is that the 90% fund would be, those dollars would be returned to the schools generating those dollars based on some process as imperfect as it may be. And, and there's an argument that one of the reasons we might have these fund balances, that fund balance in the 90% fund, is that there have been bureaucratic impediments to the expenditures of those funds, which we'll save that for another day. But, that if you talk to people on the street, which I guess we're not supposed to, but that is what you might hear. And we heard that, in all fairness, Superintendent Thurman, we heard that at the Tucker Parent Council. That was an issue that was expressed.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, let me say this.
Go ahead, Superintendent.
As the superintendent, I have no desire, no expectation, no plan to appropriate any amount of the 90% that you just referenced. The problem is being, if it's just practice, then people like myself who arrive in the district have no real knowledge of what the practice was. What this does is give the board an opportunity to elevate practice to policy so that it clearly states how the funds should be repatriated,
Right.
how they should be used. Absent that, you will have a situation where you have money in a budget, where you have needs in schools, and the money is not being appropriated for that purpose. So what I would hope would occur from this point forward is that this board will elevate the practice, whatever it is I'm not familiar with,
Right.
to policy, so that myself and the men and women who work with me can then proceed to follow that policy, repatriate the money to support academic achievement and career readiness in our school. The only thing we need is for the practice to become a policy.
And that's fair enough. So, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page here, so that we have a practice, again, reflected, imperfect as it may be, by our own accounting system that reflects two balances. I understand your concern that the practice would best be evidenced by policy to remove any ambiguity, and also to send a message to our schools that there was no intent to change their reasonable, what I think is a reasonable understanding, based again on our own central office fund structure. And so the concern I would express is that we are beginning, I don't want us to raise our hopes to a level beyond, so we build a model that builds that 5.8 million, and if 5.2 of it is then segregated out of this fund based on a policy that reflects the practice, that would change all these numbers to a certain extent. You'd have,
I can say, without any reservation, it was my recommendation that suggested we use the term reserve for those funds.
okay.
All right, let's be clear.
Okay.
It was my recommendation that we place it there to segregate those funds. The problem is, and I've heard some people raise some concerns about after school, but I'm not certain anybody knew what the total was. There were many of us who did not know the fund even existed. It was not included in the original projections. I don't think that fulfills our fiduciary duty to the public. If they are funds in the possession or control or administration of this district, we are obligated to share that with the tax holders, with the taxpayers and the stakeholders in this district. All I need is for this board to direct me
Okay.
as to how we should proceed. Now that we know, it's incumbent upon the board to take the next step.
So then it might be fair if policy is to follow practice, when we get into representation of the budget, that the 90% share of the 5.8 million might be represented in a different way as basically a reserve fund, a dedicated fund, enterprise fund for the schools that have generated. Somehow that would
I think
reflect
policy
practice
can
and
define what
Right.
it is.
Okay.
Right
So-
now, it's not defined.
Okay, fair enough.
It's a
So-
fund that exists that was literally off the books to some extent. So what this board can do is can define what it is, how it should be termed, and how it should be appropriated, or utilized.
Okay.
But that's incumbent upon the board. I
Fair
can't do
enough.
anything
Fair
with
enough.
it.
I mean, we're all come to this with.
Thank you,
I can't do
Superintendent.
anything with it at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Bell.
And just to go from a big picture, our 3 items that we're charged with as a school board is to approve a balanced budget, which this is our process, create policy, which we're addressing right now, and we're going to talk about and figure out a solution for accountability. We could tie this into the superintendent's 90-day action plan, where he charges himself with decentralizing some of the operations and pushing the authority down to the local level. I mean, it fits right into our goals, and so we do have a process going forward. I did back out the 5.8 in some of my numbers on page 4 of 9 from a total additional anticipated revenue of $26,673,000. You know, the net number after the after school is $20,873,000 is a net without the after school program in there, and then the total anticipated revenue instead of $759,073 is $753,273, and that's just from my own calculations going forward, trying to figure out how we balance our budget.
Right, though I think we'd have to add back 580,000.
No, I'm with you on that, but just ballparking right now, and this is where we are. We're walking into the ballpark, and so we're not in the 7th inning stretch yet. That'll come later. All right.
We just want you to have the information that
Thank
you have not had. And hopefully now that we shared the information, we can get better policy making. at
Yes,
the
we
board
shall.
level.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent. Any other comments or questions by the board at all before we get into citizen comments? Okay. Mr. Bell, thank you very much. Wonderful job. Thank you, and welcome. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Campbell to read the guidelines for public comments, please. Mr. Campbell.
Guidelines for public comment. In accordance with board policy, each speaker will be limited to 2 minutes. The hearing will last a maximum of 1 hour or 30 speakers, and is strictly limited to topics concerning the school district. The board will not allow abusive language, threats, jeers, comments, applause, or shouts from the floor. In the event that happens, we will ask the disruptive person to leave the hearing room. We appreciate the comments made today. However, this is not forum for the board to respond to those comments, given that the board will not have had a chance to consider or deliberate regarding comments made here.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. And at this time, I will start to call up the speakers. The initial speaker is Mr. Daniel Zobak. And excuse me for any mispronunciations, because I still think McMahon is a really hard one to pronounce also. But after that's Joel Edwards and Mr. Willie Pringle.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Subchak. As I said on Monday, I'm a teacher at Southwest DeKalb High School. I spoke on Monday about the need for taking care of the students. Today I'm going to speak about the need of taking care of the people who take care of the students. On May 26th, the seniors at Southwest DeKalb High School will cross the stage and we will close out the 2012-13 school year. We will close out my 8th year as a public school teacher. And at 8 years, you would think, okay, I should be doing okay for myself. I make $300 more than a brand new teacher. $300. And I will go into August with 8 years experience on that brand new teacher. In April 2009, I was at a hearing very much like this. It was held in the cafeteria of the William Bradley Bryant Center. The then CFO was talking about the very first furlough day we would have going into the 9-10 school year. That CFO said, we will reduce the local supplement, the amount we pay our teachers above and beyond what the state pays, by the equivalent of 1 day's pay. What he failed to say is the state gave us a step that year. So in addition to reducing my local supplement by about $200, the board absorbed the $1,000 step that the state gave me. I'm sorry, 1 day's pay is not $1,200 in DeKalb County. Too many teachers are making what the state says you have to pay us and not a penny more. DeKalb County is not paying me 1 cent this year to teach classes. The state of Georgia is, but DeKalb County is not paying me anything to teach. Please look at the local supplements. Take care of these people who are taking care of our teachers, because you're going to scare a lot of experienced teachers off. Too many of us could go anywhere, 179 other districts, and be making more. So please take care of us. I love what I do. I love my children. I need to be able to take care of myself so I can take care of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Mr. Edwards?
Good evening, board members. I really appreciate what you all are doing. I think this is one of the most intelligent board members that DeKalb County School System have ever had. I'm representing Restore DeKalb. I'm also a member of Work Watchdog Organizer Reform and Coalition. Our mission is to increase transparency, ethics, accountability within our government agency, especially in the school system. Now, when we talk about accountability, I went out to the South Yard over in Panthersville and found out that this school system has 3 contractors on fire extinguishers. 3 contractors. I also found out that for the drivers, there's no eye wash in the event that they have a spill, refueling the buses. Fire extinguishers was out of compliance, did I mention that? The last inspection was 2008. 2008, okay? Bathrooms in the fuel stations are leaking. There's a pan to hold some of the water. The catch base is stopped up at a refueling station where the bus drivers go in and get fuel. The fuel shelters are leaking. There's no lounge for the bus driver. There are about 5 to 8 trailers that's parked at Panthersville. These bus drivers have a 2-time run. They get no split in between. That's money. No split in between. They have to sit on the bus until the second part of the run. There are 5 to 8 trailers that's parked that's not being used. Not being used. It could be used for lounge for the bus drivers. Also, the lights are not working in at some part of the facilities, and the fuel man, the guy that monitors the fuel station, at 2:30, he's gone. There's no one there after 2:30 to man the fuel station, which results in theft of bus parts or fuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Appreciate your advocacy. Mr. Pringle.
First, I'd like to say good evening to the board, to the chairman, Mr. Thurman. First, I give honor to God for allowing me to be here, to be a voice for the voiceless. And I can say as a parent, been involved in looking at for us with the budget here, I want to say we as parents, as a group, Restore DeKalb, and also another group we're working with, we've been asking for a forensic financial audit of back 10 years. Mr. Thurman, I want to say, you're saying you're for our children. I want to say to you, if you really want to get down to the bottom, do a 10-year forensic audit. Why is that? Because I'm looking at some of the money that here, I'm listening to the financial statement that Mr. Bell just said. I know Mr. Bell do not know really a whole lot what's been going on in this county when it's dealing with the finance. But as a parent that's been observing the finance, I can truly say the students are being shortchanged here. Our teachers, they are definitely the ones that are not getting paid. When you talk about a teacher hadn't gotten paid a raise in 12 years, something is wrong with that picture there. But also when I'm looking at the count of money that's coming through our school system that are being collected from the student, there's no real accountability, a paper trail with a lot of the finance that's coming through our school. And I want to say it to the board. When you're talking about trying to get to the bottom of the finance, here, the former superintendent that was selected for the board, one thing I can say that Dr. Atkinson found, commingling money. That's one of the problems here. It's a lot of money been mixing together that should not have been mixed at all, period. That's one thing at the hearing down there, they wanted to know. And it was brought out as where that commingling, that's where a lot of money is still out there. Title II money, 3 money, I mean, not Title, Splash 1, Splash 2, and Splash 3 money. A lot of that money is still floating around out there. And if you really want to get to the bottom, do the research and find out where all the dead bodies are lying at.
Thank you, Mr. Pringle. I'd like to next call Miss Lisa Morgan to the podium. After Miss Morgan is Lance Hammonds and then Barbara Goldberg. Miss Morgan.
Good evening, Mr. Thurman, Mr. McMahon, other members of the board. First, thank you for listening and not proposing to increase our class sizes. I always try to start with something positive when I talk to parents before I hit them with the negative. I'm truly disappointed. 10% of the money you found is what's going to come back to the teachers. 10%? Think about that for a moment. And let me tell you what I've heard throughout all the talks I've had with people from different areas since Monday night. The first comment is, I'll believe it when I see it in my paycheck. I'll believe it when I see it in my paycheck. One furlough day restored to most teachers is a little bit more than $1 per day. Mr. Subchak talked about teachers who are making state salary scale. There are over 1,000 of them. You have over 1,000 teachers who can leave DeKalb right now and go anywhere in the state and make more. And who will replace those teachers and make state salary scale with that experience in education? Teachers are having to make a decision to leave DeKalb in order to afford to provide for their families. Please relook at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Mr. Hammonds.
Good evening. I'm Lance Hammonds. I'm with the DeKalb NAACP, and I'm also the education chair. And I want to thank you guys for the job that you're doing, and I want you to know that the NAACP is with you. Our goal is to ensure that all children in our community get a quality education that allows them to compete in a global economy. We understand that's important, and we understand this budget process is the first step to getting there. What the NAACP wants you to focus on is once you get the budget all done, once you get it all balanced, we want you to target your spending for system-wide success. We want to make sure that the dollars that you've allocated go to the areas where of most need. And that's one of the platforms that our branch has. Is we want to see those dollars that you set aside targeted. That means the schools that have the lowest scores, the largest number of folks in the classroom, we need to see the resources go there. Also, in those areas you talk about the teachers, we need the most qualified teachers. Whatever you got to do to get them in those rooms, if you got to pay them, whatever you got to do, We need those resources there. And finally, when this budget is all done and you guys come back and you start looking at, okay, we want to budget for next year, we want you to be able to look back and say, okay, the money we spent, we got a real bang for it. We put the money where it's supposed to be. These programs worked, and the ones that don't work, you throw them out and get some better ones in there. So please focus on targeting your spending, give us the most bang for our bucks, and put our children first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammonds. Is Ms. Goldberg with us? Barbara Goldberg?
Oh, hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Goldberg, and I'm a member of DeKalb County School District 4. Mr. McMahon, you are my representative, and it's nice to see you. And welcome to all the new board members and to interim superintendent. Maybe I can strike interim off soon, Michael Thurman. All right. I have had 5 children to go through DeKalb County school system from 1974 to 2004. They got excellent educations, all went to college and graduated. I even have one of them back in the DeKalb County schools teaching. Now, I still have a stake in this because now I have 2 grandchildren starting out in DeKalb County schools. We've had a lot of articles in the paper lately, I'm sure y'all have all read them, about the legal fees DeKalb County has had to spend, especially on the King and Spalding Heary suit. And in fact, of course, now we all know there's a lawsuit pending against us considering the Heary suit and being unconstitutional. Because the district entered into an unconstitutional agreement with the law firm of King and Spalding, committing millions of dollars of DeKalb County school funds to attorneys. So this fiscal year that ends in June 30, we are supposed to have spent $9 million on legal fees. That's more, according to Sunday's article, that is more in legal fees spent by our school district than all the legal fees of Cobb, Fulton, and Gwinnett combined. And I know this article also quoted Superintendent Thurman, and I quote, "We've spent more in a month, almost what more school districts spend in a year." Well said, unquote, well said. When is this bleeding going to stop? Oh, I've run out of time. I just have one more thing to say. We want our teachers to realize some of this extra money that you found because they haven't had a raise in so many years. Not only that, step increases have been stopped. And I would like to have the exorbitant legal fees go to classrooms, students, and teachers. We want our schools to be back on top. And I know with our new board and Mr. Thurman's leadership, it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Thank you. That concludes our speaker list. I would like to offer the podium, correct? If a couple of individuals step up, you'll still be limited to 2 minutes. And well, when did we start? 6? We've had 6 speakers. All right, so anyway, if you'll please state your name for us.
Good evening. My name is Trina Knox. I'm a teacher at Henderson Middle School. I teach 8th grade special education, and I really have great faith that this board is going to do us some greatness in DeKalb County. One of my concerns is with benchmarks. We spent over $1 million last year in benchmarks. Now, as a special education teacher, you know I have to implement modifications, accommodations for testing. The first language arts benchmark was 20 pages, and the font was really small. Now, I know that they changed some of that along the way, but that should have never happened. Of course, I had to give that to my children, and the first time they looked at it, they automatically checked out. It took me 2 days to read that. That's 2 instructional days for a benchmark that didn't really give me useful data because the children, they really didn't pay attention most of the time. Then we had to do 3 benchmarks in February, after the 8th grade writing test, I had to give a local benchmark, I had to give a county benchmark, and I had to give a writing benchmark after the 8th grade test, which I really didn't understand that, why we had to do that. And that took me, as a special education resource teacher, I forgot to tell you that, and I have some students who are reading on 1st grade level, 3rd grade, 4th grade. It took me a whole week of instructional time. So I would like us to really look at tests that we put out for our students, especially since 8th grade is a promotional, that we really think about instructional time when we make up all these tests. And we don't modify the benchmarks, but we modify the CRCT. So, and educators, I think that we do a very good job making up some of these benchmarks, so we don't have to pay Pearson. So I want you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knox.
Good evening. I'm Amy Troche, and I hadn't planned to speak tonight, so I don't have anything nice and prepared, but I couldn't let an opportunity to speak to you on something that's important pass. So I guess just 3 points that I've been thinking about as I knew we were approaching budget time. First, I want you guys to keep an analogy in mind. It's the analogy that I use whenever I look at the numbers. I can get tricked by, nice political speak and sort of forget our mission. I want you, whenever I'm thinking about our school district, I try to imagine the school district is a family, the decision makers are the parents, the teachers and the students are the children in the family. And what we've got right now is a family where we've got the parents buying new cars, new clothes, eating out all the time while they're starving their children, not buying them clothes, not providing them opportunities. That is the just vast divide that we have right now between the people who should be getting the money, which are classrooms and teachers, and the people that don't need as much money, which are the people that don't ever have any contact with students. So that's one thing that I always keep in mind. Another thing is that I don't want you to just look at, here's our revenue and here's our expenses, and let's just try to make up whatever the difference is and try to find that. There's plenty of money in our expenses that can be raked off and given to people that deserve it. You don't just need to find the difference. You need to dig deep and look at people that are making $180,000 to do an administrative type job that never sees a student. So please dig deeper than just that difference. And just this is such an opportune moment. You can make a difference for tens of years of the success of the entire county if you make the right decisions this time. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Troche.
My name is Catherine Holmes. I'm from Stevenson School District. I just have a couple of comments. I brought to the attention of Mr. Melvin Johnson, who's the chairman. Back in February at a meeting at the school, I discovered $36,465,646 that was in other expenses. Mr. Bell is doing an excellent job from what I've heard tonight. I would just ask that he scrub the financials even more in that area, because I was very concerned when I saw that amount of money, and I even suggested then that I think that would be where some things would be hidden, some projections were probably off, that whole thing. Another comment I would like to make is the wish list that Mr. Thurman talked about. Definitely taking care of the teachers is number one, and the students. And I would like to suggest any renovations that any of the DeKalb schools may need for you guys to look into, maybe supplying that, getting with the principals at these different schools and asking them if there's any immediate emergency needs that we have renovations that the schools may need. I have 4 kids that graduated from DeKalb County, or that will graduate, and I'm really appreciating what you guys are doing and the effort that you're putting forward to help our county get back on track. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes.
Hello, My name is Jerome Baziruiha. I'm from Congo, Kinshasa. And I come on this country in April last year. I have 5 children, 3 at the International School Center and 2 at Indian Greek Elementary School. When I come to this country, International School Registry Office helped me to get my kids in school. They were very helpful me because it was very difficult to know the system. Because of what, I was with my daughter, 15 years old. She was never going to school, but at this time, she speaks, she writes, she's online with the other children. If it's possible, please bring back the International Registration Center. It's very important for new people because everything is new for us. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good evening, board members. My name is Justin Howell. I'm a DeKalb County resident, former DeKalb County School District teacher of 11 years, and I'm the current chairman for the Atlanta Refugee Youth Network. I'm here today having reviewed the executive summary of the 2013-2014 budget, and I was happy to see the line items there for the needed funding to centralize the international student intake, registration, and assessment process, as well as to provide funding for interpretation and translation services. The English Language Learner Department should be adequately staffed and funded to provide essential services to the immigrant and refugee students and their families, which includes interpretation and translation services, transcript evaluation, and a centralized registration and assessment process. Recentralization of the student registration and assessment process will allow for specialized, trained, and experienced staff to make placement decisions for international students in a fair and informed and efficient manner. This will lessen the workload for the local schools that lack designated staff with the expertise and cultural competency needed to provide these required services. The centralized enrollment process is beneficial for engaging the entire family upon first exposure to the American school system and maximizing their children's prospects for success. In the past, the DeKalb County School District actually received commendations for its centralized registration and intake processes for international students by the State Department of Education, and this centralized registration and intake process is actually seen as a best practice by groups such as Bridging Refugee Youth and Children's Services, a national technical assistance organization for organizations serving refugees and immigrants. So on behalf of the Atlanta Refugee Youth Network, as well as the refugee and immigrant community here in DeKalb, and those of us who really appreciate the diversity of this county, we urge you, strongly encourage you, to please fully fund that recentralization of that system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howell.
Good evening. My name is Judy Polachek. I am a special ed paraprofessional with DeKalb County. I have been with the county just a few months under 28 years. And I'd like to tell you what it is like for one of the lower paid employees of DeKalb. As with the teachers, we have had pay cuts every year for the last several years. Not only have we had pay cuts, but we've had the supplement for our health insurance cut. And for the lowest paid people, that was a hard blow. If you're making $100,000, $51 a month doesn't amount to that much. When you're making what the ESPs are making, that's a lot of money. Another thing, as people get closer to retirement, they come to several realizations. First of all, we are not in Social Security. We can't even get Social Security on our spouses. And that's something that I believe a lot of people are not aware of. Our tax sheltered annuity that we were depending on hasn't had anything going into that for several years. So it is just a very, very bad situation for those of us that have put years and years and years of our heart and soul into the children of DeKalb County. And I would like you to just think about the situation and do what you can. I'm not sure what that is, but I just want you to be aware of our situation.
Thank you, Ms. Judy.
Good evening again to Superintendent Thurman and to the board. I'm here again trying my best to represent the interests of 40% of the students that reach 9th grade, but once they do not graduate. That's 4 out of 10 students that arrive at 9th grade do not graduate out of DeKalb County schools. I'm trying my best to represent their interests because I'm very interested in these students, and it also represents my profession, which is excluded from the state of Georgia. I have tried my best for many years to penetrate the school system of DeKalb County, Gwinnett, the greater Atlanta area. I've tried to become a teacher because the services that I actually provide, Georgia does not support them and do not provide them. So while teachers are crying about they're not getting the raises that they deserve, what about those of us who had the skills to meet the needs of this 4 out of 10 students who have no access whatsoever? And here you have extra funds. I have tried my best to tell you all that we can meet the needs of these 4 out of 10 students. They do not have to fall out or forced out or drop out of school because they were not prepared adequately. The kind of services that I'm trying my best to administer are clinical services. They support the children that are in homes that are insufficiently able to support them, and then they come into a school system that's not sufficiently supporting them. You apparently do not have strong enough teachers in the middle schools and possibly in the elementary schools. Once they get to 9th and 10th grades, they're falling out because they're not strong enough academically.
Can we get your name, ma'am?
My name is Marla Kelly, and I really appreciate it, Mr. McMahon, okay? I appreciate it so very much because I want so much to speak with you directly, and Mr. Thurman, I would so much want to speak with you. I'd appreciate it so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Good evening, board, Mr. Thurman. My name is Gregory Davis, and I represent the bus mechanics. And I just come before you to say thank you, because I see a line item here for consideration, and from what I understand, that will give us 4 extra mechanics. And I come to convey to you all that we will stand and bring our percentage rate of completions of bus running up with these added help. We need more help, yes. I come with a solution if I could. I used to work in California for a company, Taylor Dunn Manufacturing. And when you was hired, you was told that from Christmas to New Year's, the plant would be shut down. If that becomes a policy, then what you would do would have self-inflicted furlough days, because if a person doesn't have vacation time, you don't have to pay them because it's already understood that the county is going to be shut down from Christmas to New Year's. So you can come to work, save your days, cash it in Christmas time, and take the 2 weeks off like everybody else does. So just a suggestion, something to think about, and it would be on our backs and not y'all's, saying that y'all furloughing us. And I know the furlough days was 1 for 10 and 11 months, but I'm a 12-month employee, and that wasn't addressed, so hopefully we're 1 shy also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Hi, good morning, board. Good afternoon, I'm sorry, Mr. Thurman. My name is Jacqueline Madden, and I am representing myself first and the DeKalb County School Bus Operators. I've been with DeKalb County since 1986. Long time. I remember back in the day, they said, oh, come to DeKalb County, you can retire, you can do this, you can do that. If I knew what I knew now, I would have ran the other way. You know, with the bus operators, you all know we have issues going on. So we're supposed to have a meeting on Monday and settle some of our issues. And the pay, we don't want to talk about that, but you all know how the pay is. Only thing I want you all to realize, I get up 4 o'clock every morning to be to work at 5:30 to get these kids to school on time. For the teachers, the principals, if it weren't for bus drivers, not saying they couldn't get to school, but they would have a hard time getting there. So just think about us, 4 o'clock in the morning, you might be still asleep, but remember, we're out there rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Madden.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Carlisle. I come on behalf as a special ed para, but also as a parent in the Tucker community. 2 things that I'd like to bring up. One is you talk about decentralization, more power in-house. I would like to see you give the principals more power to advocate for the needs of their staff, what they know is best for their school, candidates, teachers who are no longer effective, and ones who are highly effective. I also believe, and I may offend some of my coworkers here, I don't believe in just giving a raise because everybody needs to get a raise. I believe in merit raises. I used to work in corporate America. Principals know in-house who's being effective, who's going above and beyond, and who's picking up the slack because they know it just needs to be done, that someone needs to do it. And people aren't getting recognized. Those people eventually burn out and say, okay, I'm being taken advantage of, I'm not getting anything extra. You have people who will step up and do the work that nobody else wants to do because they know it needs to be done because it will help the school be more effective. People who don't want to be webmasters who say, well, I'll do it because no one else wants to because it's critical for our school system. There's got to be more cross-training. You would be effective in helping your paras, being able to access ESIS to help the teachers take attendance where you have, if the teacher's out, you have to do it in paper, then turn it into the school attendance secretary who's already overburdened with other stuff that could be. There should be more cross-training in-house to be more effective within the school system and more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lisa.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
My name is Ronald Sewell. I'm a proud parent of a 10th grader, special needs students. I come speaking this evening as a parent and for my child. I've heard a lot this evening and over the times about the teachers, how they're underpaid and overworked. I commend the work that they do. I believe in what they do, but I also believe that the parents of DeKalb County really needs to become more involved. The way that you get them more involved is make them feel like they're part of what's going on. And the reason I speak this way is in particular the small group that I always say is the forgotten group, and that's those special needs kids. We always talk about the gifted, we always talk about the accelerated, but the special need kids have special things that they need also. Those parents need a better support group, a better organization for them to come and mingle and get together and make sure that their kids are getting what they need. I am proud to say, at the school that my daughter attends, she is getting that. She have an outstanding principal, she have outstanding teachers, she have outstanding support. Me, as a parent, I volunteer at that school because I'm afforded that opportunity, and I would do any and everything I can to not only support my daughter, but all of the children at that school. And to each and every one of you, I say a special thank you. And to Mr. Thurman, definitely say thank you to you. And I enjoy seeing you at different occasions and different things. And please, please, continue being the way you are. Continue working for the children of DeKalb. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Do we have any other people who'd like to participate in our citizen comments this evening?
Good evening. My name is Phil Stovell.
Say your name again, I'm sorry.
Phyllis Stovell.
Thank you, Ms. Will.
I'm on the bus with the special needs on the bus monitor on the buses. And I want to address we do take care of the children on the bus as far as the special needs are concerned, but a lot of them have a lot of medical issues. And I think that we need more training as far as how to take care of these children. Because a lot of times I've seen, being on other buses, because I'm always being pushed from one bus to the other, and I don't know the children. A lot of these are autistic children, and they don't like any break in their structure, you know what I'm saying? And it's just that it's frustrating to be bounced from bus to bus because there's such a shortage of the bus drivers as well as the bus monitors. And I've seen a lot of drivers, they just sit there and just drive. And I've observed a lot of children on the bus, whereas they're not being watched the way they're supposed to be watched. They're really not, because they're not really able to do that. You know what I'm saying? Because they're not trained. And then when I bring the thing up to my transportation supervisor, I'm just pushed off to another bus because I'm bringing it to their attention. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phyllis. I'll take this moment to conclude our citizen comments portion of our meeting this evening. I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn the public budget input hearing to a committee of the whole. All right. Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Motion by Mr. Coleman, second by Mr. Dr. Irwin. Show of hands. Passes 7-0.